Hello students, welcome to session 2 of Water, a Precious Resource. Now students, in the previous session we studied about water, the importance of water and also the forms of water. And in short we discussed about hydrological cycle, also called as water cycle. So students, there is one more important topic which we need to study, which we need to discuss, and that is uses of water. So students, the most important benefit of water is that it can prevent dehydration in human beings, and it is consumed by every person who is living on earth. Additionally, it is used in agriculture for irrigating farmlands, and it is the source of power for the production of hydroelectricity. It can also prevent damages, injuries and deaths when it is used as a fire extinguisher. And other than these uses, human beings also use water for washing, recreation, food processing and other purposes too. So you see that in a complex society, water use is varied from municipal and agricultural to mining and other industrial uses. So there are many broad categories of water. There are many categories of water uses describing activities that are included within each category. For example, municipal water use includes the diverse activities from plant watering to toilet flush. Then data are provided to show how much water is consumed by various types of water users. So if you check on the internet, you will be able to see that there are many surveys, there are many data which will show you that water is consumed by various types of water users. Even the cost of water, also we come to know about the cost of water too by using the water, by which we can also predict that how much availability of water is there. So there are various uses of water. The main uses for drinking purpose, then comes the secondary uses are the washing, bathing, then clothing and other uses too. Clothing means for washing the clothes, then for building construction, then for cooking, for the generation of steam in industrial use, and electricity generation, then for generating hydroelectricity, for the manufacture of hydrogen, oxygen and water gas as a solvent for irrigation purposes. So there are many such uses. So water is basically used for many purposes, including growing crops, producing copper, growing crops, then producing copper, generating electricity, watering lawns, keeping clean drinking and recreation. Balancing the water budget comes down to increasing the supply of water and or decreasing the demand. Even the reducing demand involves reducing how much water each person uses, limiting the number of people using water, or slowing down the rate of growth of using water. So to understand what these choices are, we must first understand the water use, which is used in the past and how it is used today. So there are three major groups of water users, that is the domestic use, the agricultural interests and industry including mining. So basically the increase in municipal water use during the 1980s was offset by decreasing agricultural use, with total water use in some area holding steady during its period. Even the agricultural use has risen since 1993, and it has pushed the total water use to a great extent by 1997 or by 2000. So many people think water as an unlimited resource, but nevertheless only 1% of all the world's water can be used for drinking. Nearly 97% of the world's water is salty or otherwise undrinkable, and the other 2% is locked away in the ice caps and glaciers. So here is no new water available for us. We are using the same water the dinosaurs used millions of years ago. So you should keep in mind that even there is 97% of water available on Earth, but that is actually not usable or drinkable. So this is just the introduction to the use of water. Now let us actually discuss about the uses of water. Yes, students, uses of water. Students, the uses of water can be broadly divided into agricultural, domestic, and industrial purposes. Agricultural, domestic, and industrial purposes. Now, the major portion of water in India is used in agriculture, as India is mainly an agricultural country. So basically, students, nearly 60% of the Indian population depends on agriculture for their living and uses nearly 90% of all the water for irrigation. Now, the use of water for agriculture has changed the production of crops dramatically in the 20th century. Now, students, agricultural use of water accounts for nearly 70% of the water used throughout the world, and the major of this water is used for irrigation purpose. Now, during the 1970s, the construction of irrigation systems dramatically increased, and its rate of growth began to increase in the developed and developing countries in the 1980s. So this increase in irrigation development guarantees an increase in crop production in many countries. So irrigation basically allows the land that does not receive enough precipitation annually or rainfall annually to become land that can be used for productive agriculture. So students, Indian agricultural production is the in most part of the country is closely related to skillful and wise water management practices, and most of the agricultural practices in India is confined to the few monsoon months, and during the monsoon season India is usually endowed with generous rainfall, although not so much frequently, but this bountiful monsoon season turns into a terror, causing uncontrollable flood in the parts of the country. So this is also a very critical matter. So in a matter of this flood and all that, many constructions should be done so that agricultural crops can get water, and even floods would not be a major problem in our country. So in very few years the monsoon becomes efficient, sometimes it becomes uncontrollable, sometimes erratic, leading to drought and possibly famine. So this explains the inextricable link between the Indian agriculture and effective water management practices known across different parts of India since the ancient times. Often people which farm in the place where enough rain falls during the year and at the right times to the water plants just with rainfall. Even farmers don't have to worry about the plants getting enough rainfall. That is why dry farming is done. Dry farming practice is coming into picture because the farmers don't have to carry water to the plants. But in other places like Egypt or Arabian Peninsula, it hardly rains at all, and farmers can't rely just on the rainfall to water their crops. So they have to find some way of getting water from the river to their fields. And that's called wet farming. And the way they get water from the river is called irrigation. And that is why this irrigation method of watering the plants on a daily purpose, on a regular purpose, this practice came into existence. So there are lots of different ways to get water from the river to the fields. One way is just to carrying the water yourself in the buckets, and plenty of people irrigated this way in the ancient time and in the medieval period. But it's very hard work carrying water in buckets, and we can't carry very much even if we worry very hard, or if we actually work very hard, right? So the women in the ancient times were pulling water up from the river to their irrigation canal with ropes, and hanging the bucket between the ropes lets the women work together, right? So it's very hard, and that is why this practice came into existence. So whenever people used this carrying of buckets and working so hard, it was difficult to water plants every time. So a kind of machine also came into existence then, and after that many other things came, and many water management practices were done which were useful for people, for the human beings. So irrigation systems, that is why hence they are necessary, because the monsoons are unpredictable, and in regions where cultivation completely depends on the rains, a weak monsoon season can result in reduced yields or even total crop failure. So this is a point of concern. So water basically required for household use is called domestic water. What we right now discussed was all about agriculture, and now we will discuss about the domestic use of water. Now it is actually required for a variety of purposes, such as drinking, preparing food, like cooking, then washing clothes and dishes, bathing, watering plants, etc., etc. So we generally get water in our homes either delivered by the municipal water distribution system, or we extract it from an underground source through a motor-driven tube well. So thousands have lived without love, not one without water, as said by W.H. Auden. So where there is water, there is life. We know very well life exists around numerous sources of water, which makes it important for survival and luxury too. So it is a part of the biosphere that should not be overused, ignored, or taken for granted. Because of this, water should be conserved to sustain our domestic needs for the future. As world population is constantly growing, the demand for water increases every day, and the luxuries of domestic uses of water have become a necessity to people in their homes and backyards, even, which are people who are very fond of doing gardening, right? So domestic water is normally characterized by the use inside and outside the home, like washing the dishes, cooking meal, laundry, bathing, watering the lawn or garden, and other household activities, right? So this we should keep in mind, that for domestic use also water is very necessary. Even in cities, municipal water treatment plants supply homes with treated water that matches drinking water standards. And in rural areas, however, over 80% of the domestic water comes from the underground sources. As we discussed, the diagrammatic representation which we saw first, in which we also observed, we'll notice that 0.592% is present as groundwater on earth, right? So we should use it very judiciously. Now, as we know that there are water treatment plants, so this is the water distribution and water treatment system in a city. This diagram shows the water treatment system in a city. What is this? Water treatment system or water distribution in a city. Now here you can see some trees. Here this is lake or river or pond, whatever you can take. Then this is the raw water intake. Raw water intake means it is not filtered. Here somewhere there is pump, because of which the water pumps. Raw water intake is done by the pump. It passes through the pump when it comes from the lake or river, and then it is passed to this other step for other procedure, that is for chemical treatment, so that it can be filtered out, and then it is sent to sludge. After that, here you can see this is like coal, sand, gravel. So first it is passed to sludge, and then the water also comes from the coal, sand and gravel, and finally it goes along in here where sand filtration is also done. Sand, gravel and coal filtration is done. So after passing from the sludge and getting sand, coal and gravel getting filtrated, it is passed on to clear wells. This is not the well, this is the clear well, and this container which we can see here is the container for disinfection. Disinfection is done with the addition of chlorine and ammonia in water. So this is added for disinfection. Then after that it passes through pump, which is somewhere here. It's not visible in the diagram. And then when it passes from the pump, it passes to the storage tank, right? After that, from the storage tank, it passes to other places like homes, right? And even this sludge which you can see here, it also passes to sanitary sewer system. So in this way, the water distribution and water treatment system in the city works, right? So as we saw that in cities, municipal water treatment plants supply homes with treated water, means it is first sludged, then chemical treatment is done, then disinfection with the addition of chlorine and ammonia is done, and then into the storage tank from which the water passes to many homes, right? So in rural areas, 80% of the domestic water comes from the underground sources, and in areas where water is scarce or where wells, ponds and rivers dry up in summers, people have to travel long distances to fetch water for their daily needs. So this is a big problem till now also. It has not been eradicated or solved totally, right? So other than the domestic uses and for the agricultural uses, water is also used for industrial purposes. So industry also depends on water at all levels of production, like it is used as a raw material, then as a solvent, as a coolant, as a transport agent, and for generating electricity. So basically industries that produce metals, wood, paper, chemicals, gasoline, gas, most of the other products, they all use water in some parts of their production process. So industry depends on water, and much of the water is used for agriculture, and domestic households depending upon the they also depend upon the water. So industrial reliance on water takes it it makes it essential to preserve water in every aspect, and it makes sure that water pollution is kept at minimal levels, but it can be totally eradicated. So total industrial water use in the world is about 22%. Total industrial water use is about 22%, with the developed countries using 59% and the developing and underdeveloped countries using some percent and a minuscule of 8%, right? So industries that rely on clean water actually use the municipal water, or they have their own facilities with which they get some water treatment to ensure that water's quality is good. Even the food industry requires clean water, so there is no health risk from the food it produces, because nobody wants to drink a soda which is made with the contaminated water, or the cold drink. We cannot talk about cold drink because it does not contain so much of water, but even the paper mills use millions of gallons of water to manufacture paper. So if the water has too much of sediment or too much of chemicals, then quality of the paper could suffer to machinery, and machinery could even get damaged. So for other industries, water is key to production, but it doesn't necessarily have to be clean. For example, power plants and steel mills use large volumes of water as coolant for their equipments. So for those types of industrial uses, water doesn't need to meet the same high standard of cleanliness as in paper industry or the food industry. So industrial water needed to be treated before its return to the water cycle, and treatment may remove chemicals used in the manufacturing or change the water's temperature. Industries that discharge waste water into surface water resources make rivers or stream very polluted. So they must also have special permit, and in exchange for the permit, industries should agree to treat the wastewater so that it meets the water quality standards. And instead of handling treatment on their own, most industries choose to use their community's wastewater treatment plant. So the industries that produce metals, wood and paper products, chemicals, gasoline and all this, they should keep in mind that the garbage disposal are the major users of water, and so that should be kept in mind. Industrial water includes water used for such purposes like fabricating, processing, washing, diluting, cooling or transporting, and even for the sanitation needs within the manufacturing facility, water is used. So some industries that use large amounts of water produce such commodities as food, paper, chemical, refined petroleum or primary metals. So this should be kept in mind, which are actually using water for industrial purposes. So due to the rapid industrial development, the demand for water in this area has increased in the past several years. And so this use of water is increasing each and every day at an agricultural level, at a domestic or personal level, or for personal needs, and as well as for industrial level. So use of water for every purpose, for each and every purpose, is actually becoming a necessity now. So we should use it very wisely. So students, that was all about the uses of water. Now we will discuss about other important topic of water, and that is sources of water. So students, as we discussed about precipitation, let us discuss about precipitation in some detail. Students, precipitation in the form of rain or snow provides fresh water to our planet Earth. We know that because it is one of the very important process in the hydrological cycle. So most of the fresh water returns to the oceans through rivers flowing across the globe, and a small portion of it is absorbed by the soil and it is stored underground, right? So if it is stored underground, a still smaller portion is stored in natural and man-made tanks and reservoirs. Man-made means like tanks and reservoirs. So this small portion is also stored in natural and man-made water bodies like lakes and ponds and tanks and reservoirs. So basically, there are various sources of water which can be divided into two main categories called surface water and secondly underground water or subsoil water. So let us discuss about it. Yes, surface water. Now students, water present on the surface of the earth is called surface water. How simple is it? It is classified or divided into three categories depending upon the purity of water. So it is basically divided into rainwater, river and lake water, and thirdly, sea and ocean water. So let us study about it. Yes, rainwater. Students, rainwater is the purest form of water. And we have been studying this from the lower grades or the previous grades. That rainwater is the purest form of water. As water from the seas and rivers evaporate to form water vapor due to the heat of the sun, it leaves behind all the impurities. And what we finally get is the pure form of water. So as we studied in hydrological cycle, when precipitation occurs, the first showers dissolve certain gases present in the air, and also it brings the suspended impurities along with it. So subsequent showers, however, contain this pure water, because during precipitation, all the polluted gases, they dissolve in the air, right? The first showers, they will dissolve these gases in the air, because these gases, they cannot dissolve in air automatically. Because of the showers only, they will dissolve. And it also brings the suspended impurities. So finally, what do we get when it filters? Yes, we get pure water. And hence we can say that rainwater can give us the pure form of water. So other than the rainwater, the surface water is divided into river and lake water too. Now the water in these water bodies, that is river and lake, comes either from the rainfall or melting of snow from the glaciers on the mountains. So in this way also we get the water from river and lake. Other than this, we also obtain water from sea and ocean. So oceans are a huge store of water, we know it very well. But the water is very salty and it is not fit for domestic or agricultural use. And so the treat the treatment of water, the salty water, is very expensive. Though it can be used if it is treated well, we can get the pure form of water, right? Now, other than the surface water, there is underground water or subsoil water also, right? As we discussed that there are two sources of water, surface water and underground water or subsoil water. Now, before stepping into this topic, I would like to share some points of sea and ocean water. Now, students, as vast as the oceans are, it is difficult to imagine the amount of trash in them. Now, in 2006, a study was conducted and the report published by the United Nations Environment Programme, that is UNEP, stated that an estimated 18,000 pieces of floating plastic garbage was present on an average per square kilometer of the ocean. And with so much of plastic in the ocean, marine life is jeopardized. So, Greenpeace studies on dead sea turtles have discovered taking in of marine debris in 56 to 79% of the animals, and people must be aware of the impact plastic garbage is having on our oceans, and we should switch to reusable bags so that this sea and ocean water does not get polluted, right? Because if it will get polluted, obviously marine life would be having adverse effects, right? So that was about surface water. Now here we are talking about the underground water. Now, groundwater, which is the water under the ground, where the soil is completely filled or it is saturated with water. So what happens? It is saturated with water means rainwater seeps through topsoil and layers of rocks like limestone, sand and gravel, and then it gets collected on the top of the non-porous layers, and that is why this water then goes under the ground, and that is why we call it as groundwater or subsoil water. Why subsoil? Because rainwater seeps through topsoil and then the layers of rocks, and that is why it is called as subsoil water. So basically, the top level of this underground water is called the water table, and underground water is also called as an aquifer. Now here, the place where the water table meets the land surface, water may come out of the surface in the form of natural spring and flow into the lake, stream or an ocean. And then what happens in an aquifer, which is also called as underground water? Let us see. Yes, this is a beautiful diagrammatic representation of underground water or aquifer. What is it? Underground water or aquifer, right? Now here you can see some layers. Now this is showing that from trees there is the evaporation process taking place. So this evaporation process taking place in plants and trees is called transpiration, right? And here you can see the stream. This line which you can see, it is the water table. This layer is the unconfined aquifer, while the lower one which you can see here is the confined aquifer, right? So the place where the water table meets the land surface, this one, water table meets the land surface, water may come out of this surface in the form of natural spring and flow into a lake, stream or river or an ocean, right? And then the groundwater that meets the land surface also keeps rivers, streams and lakes filled with water, so that wells can also be drilled to take out the underground water. So in this way we can use the underground water. Now underground water, why do we use underground water, or why do we need to drill this water? Because basically underground water is usually clean and it is safe to drink, and this is because the porous layers of the earth act as fine filters, removing bacteria and other insoluble impurities as the water seeps through the rainwater. So nevertheless, underground water has a high concentration of dissolved salts, but if some treatment is to be taken place, then these dissolved salts can be separated out and it can be filtered. So underground water is also one source of water with which we can use it for many purposes, for industrial purposes too, and for domestic purposes too, right? So this was about the sources of water, and I hope you liked this topic too, right? So that was all about the sources of water. We will discuss about the other important topics of water too, but in the next session. Till then, keep learning, keep enjoying, have fun, and take care. Goodbye, students.